Okay, so here we go with our next Military AI Works FSDS tutorial series on modeling, and we're still talking about the basics here. And the first two tutorials dealt with part mode and point mode. Now we're going to talk a little bit about polygon mode, which is can be entered by going to the mode menu and then just selecting poly, or you can just click on the little triangular icon up here in your little menu. For starters, let's talk about a little bit about what a polygon actually is. And you know, polygon by its mathematical definition is simply a flat two-dimensional surface with a face on it that is bounded on all sides by line segments, if you will, or non-round segments that each segment or each pair of segments ends at a vertex or at a point. So technically you can have just about any shape and it qualifies as a polygon as long as it's flat. It's on, you know, just 2 to 3 axes or 2 dimensions, and it has fully enclosed you know, boundaries or bounding bodies so that it's not open in any way. So technically a perfectly round circle does not qualify as a polygon because it doesn't have straight segments, but something that looks like an octagon, or you know, with even more sides than 8, would also qualify as a polygon as long as it's not completely round. So we have to talk about real quick about how FSDS counts polygons and what FSDS considers a polygon versus how your actual graphics card will render a model or a three-dimensional model. In game, in Flight Simulator, everything that your graphics engine and your graphics card is going to render is going to be done as a series of triangles. So for example, if I bring up just a flat or a round polygon here, let me give it a bunch of sides so that I can kind of demonstrate this to you. And we'll make it a little bit bigger so that we can see this here. So I bring up a you know, a 16-sided polygon in this case, whatever it looks like to you. You know, obviously it has a fairly round shape to it, and you can see that it's made up of a continuous series of flat, you know, straight segments that are all attached to each other. So the whole thing's enclosed, and each pair of segments ends at a vertex or a point. So it does qualify as a definition of a polygon. But if we go over here just to show you, and we go to File, and we go Project Statistics, FSDS will come up and say you've got one part, it's got 16 vertices or points, and then it consists of one polygon. But the point I'm trying to get at is that in game, your graphics engine has to draw everything as a triangle. So to come up with this, you know, this 16-sided polygon and to make it out of a series of triangles, it's going to have to basically divide it kind of in the middle like a pizza pie. So just real quick, I can show you what it would look like in game if you could see it by just going to the Subdivide feature here, and you can see that it then gets made up of a series of, what is this, 16 segments, you know, pie slice segments or triangular shaped segments. So now if we go in here to File and we go to Project Statistics, it'll say you have one part with 17 vertices because it added a little point here in the middle, and then 16 polygons. So the point I'm getting is that sometimes if you're designing an airplane or you know, a large set of scenery or whatever, and you want to kind of get an idea of how many polygons it's made up of, you can't necessarily go to this Project Statistics menu and use that count, because it may or may not be accurate. Because remember, before we did this, FSDS was counting this as just one polygon, when in fact in game it's going to be rendered as probably 16 separate polygons. It may or may not be, but just that difference alone is enough to, you know, hopefully get your attention a little bit to know that don't trust that number that you see here in FSDS. So some of the guys out there have come up with kind of a conversion factor, and for airplanes it seems to be that if you take the number that FSDS gives you and you multiply that by about 1.8, that seems to give you a fairly realistic, accurate number as to the amount of actual polygons that will be drawn, or you know, triangles that will be drawn in game. And again, you can always, if you have a copy of Aircraft Container Manager, you can always throw your model in that if it's an aircraft model, and that will give you an accurate count of the polygons. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that as we talk about what polygons are and what they are not. But again, some of the basic characteristics of a polygon here is obviously it's just two-dimensional, it's flat, okay, and it only has one face, and that face only faces in one direction. And on the back side of that, if I rotate this around, you can see there's nothing there. So it is there, it's just that again, you're only looking at one face of a polygon, and that's a good thing, because if we design a building, for example, in FSDS, a building is nothing more than just a cube that you've shaped, and the cube normally has 6 different sides or 6 different faces to it. And in game, you're really only going to be seeing 5 of those faces, because the one face that is pointing towards the ground, you're not even going to see that. And generally, as a scenery designer, we'll go ahead and delete that ahead of time. But we don't obviously want your graphics engine and your computer to waste resources drawing the inside of these structures, when all they really need to do is to draw the outside faces of these structures, or the outside polygons. So the term polygon is used. It can be, like I said, it can be used for as basic as a triangle shape, or something a lot more complex. But generally, your graphics engine is going to render everything as a series of triangles, and depending on what your actual shape is, the number of triangles obviously are gonna differ based on that. So, but again, polygon, as you can see here, just the one flat side or one flat face to it. And I just want to point out a couple things here in polygon mode that I'm in. And notice I have the little triangle icon is highlighted here, telling me that I'm in polygon mode. So let me turn off the graph so that you can see this a little bit better. And actually, this isn't a good example, because I want to show you the vector that exists here. And so this is a little bit the wrong shape. So let me bring up just a triangular shape, which will be a little bit better example here, and you hopefully can see the graphic, or the graph, or the vector. Well, it's not going to work either, so let me rotate that. What I'm trying to show you is that, and I can do that by turning off the solid view here, is that each polygon, when you use this mode, has this little vector over here in the center. Okay, so you can see that as I move it around, that little vector is going to point outwards, or it's going to point in the direction that the polygon face is actually facing. So when you have a whole group of polygons, sometimes they can get flipped over in the opposite direction, and sometimes the only way to really know which way the polygon is facing is to use that little vector. And normally you can see that down here in the other design windows. And I think if I delete this and go with like a cube and go to polygon mode, yeah, you can see it a little bit better now. Okay, let me zoom in there. So you can see each of the polygons as I scroll through each polygon with the arrow keys. And again, that's how on a part, like like a cube that has multiple polygons or multiple faces or sides, that's how you scroll through the different polygons, is using your little arrow keys, or you can use these little next and back keys up here. So just to keep you aware of that, you can see here the backwards facing polygon, because I'm looking at the top down view, it obviously shows that its little perpendicular vector is pointed in the direction that it's facing, and that makes sense as well. So you can also see it over here in the preview view, and as I scroll through the different polygons, you can see how it changes. So that's just kind of the basic characteristics when you're working in polygon mode. Now I have my preferences set so that my polygons show up as this this kind of neon green color, and I think I've mainly done that to help you see the video a little bit clearer. I think if you haven't messed with it, or you haven't touched your preferences in FSDS just yet, it'll still be set to white. And again, the way you change these colors is you just go up here to File, go down to, where is it, Preferences, okay, and then that brings up this menu here for all the different colors. And in this case, I have my current polygon color. If I click on that, you can see it's this neon green color. Okay, so if you need to change that, or you want to change that, you can do that on your own. So let's get in a little bit to polygon mode, and talking about what you can do and what you can't do with polygon mode, and some of the neat things you can do, and some of the some of the practical uses that we have for this mode. So I think we'll just stick with our cube here, and we'll just kind of go through a couple things, and I'll try to demonstrate what what you can and can't do. And for starters, we'll look at the move mode, the rotate mode, and the scale mode, and just to show you what you can and can't do with an individual polygon. So if we try to click on move mode, and I come down here to my top down design window, and I try to move this polygon back and forth, it won't move. And if you think about it, that would be the equivalent of trying to take one of the faces of your part and move the entire face, one way or the other. And if you think about that, if you were able to move one of the faces off, then you'd kind of leave it hanging out there in three-dimensional space, and you may not be able to get it back in exactly the right position. So that particular option, the move mode, is not does not work for polygons. And the other option that doesn't work is scale. You can't actually scale a polygon. Okay, and you can see if I choose a different polygon and I try to scale it, nothing happens. So there's only one of these three functions that'll work for polygon mode, and that is the rotate mode. And essentially, instead of rotating the polygon, it's just going to rotate the whole part. So you can see here, if I try to rotate it back and forth, this feature, this operation works just like if you're working with a part in part mode. It goes ahead and rotates the entire part. Probably they should have just disabled this feature to start with just to make it easier. But again, you can see whatever I do, whichever mode or whichever window I choose to work in, it's gonna rotate the whole part around that axis. So down here in the back view, it's going to rotate around the z-axis, and again, it's always going to rotate around whichever axis is there in the center of your axis indicator. Okay, so not really a lot of functionality in that. You're not going to use that very much. I don't know that I've ever tried to rotate a polygon. It's the same as just coming over here to part mode and doing the same exact thing in part mode. So, but it is an option. It is there. It is available. So. Let me delete this guy and start over with a clean cube here and back into polygon mode. And again, you can see right away when it comes up in polygon mode, you get the polygon highlighted there. So we can't move it, we can't scale it, we can try to rotate it, but we're not really rotating the polygon, we're rotating the entire part. One neat thing you can do, however, is you can delete polygons at your discretion. And let me turn the solid view back on here for you. Display is solid. Zoom him out a little bit so you can see this as it happens. So if I want to delete one of the sides of this polygon and leave all the other sides intact, I could try it by going in and trying to delete the points. But if I go in here and I delete the points, let's say I want to delete the back side, okay, I would just maybe highlight this back side, a set of points, and delete them, and then look what happens. I lose my entire structure. Okay, so I don't want to do that. I want to be able to delete just that back surface or that back face of this particular cube. And so I can do that by going into polygon mode, scrolling around till I get to that back face or that back polygon, if you want to call it that, and hit your delete key, and you can see over here in the preview pane that it's gone away. Now notice when you're looking on the inside of this cube, you can't see anything, and that makes sense for what we talked about for polygons, because again, polygons are a flat two-dimensional structure or surface that has a face that only shows in one direction. So what we've done here is we've deleted the outward facing polygon, and now the reason we can't see anything is because we're looking on the inside of this cube, and again, there's nothing rendered on the inside of this cube because all the other polygons, either the 5 polygons or the 5 faces that are left, are all pointed and facing in the outwards direction. So you can go through and you can literally delete, if you want to, you can delete every single polygon that's associated with this cube until you literally are left with either just one polygon or in this case no polygons. Now the question is, do we actually still have a part at this point? And yes, the answer is yes, we do have a part, and there's 2 ways to tell. Well, actually there's 3 ways to tell. You've still got your axis indicator here, so anytime you have an axis indicator, you still technically have a part. And technically it's going to be part of a bigger model if you want to compile that. You can go down here to just below the right view window, and you can look at that, and obviously it still says box down there, so that tells you that you have a part as well. And then the third thing you can do is you can go into point mode, and this is an interesting thing when you delete polygons. When you delete polygons, you don't delete the vertexes or the points. The points or the vertexes stay in place, they stay there, and there's a real good reason for that, because we can actually go back in and redraw the polygons or recreate the polygons, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So the points are still there. Now the points aren't connected to anything, they're not connected to any kind of wireframe or any segments or anything, so at this point they're pretty much useless. And if you wanted to get rid of those, you can always go to part and delete orphaned points, because again, these would be considered orphaned at this point because they're not connected to anything. And if you do that, you can delete all the orphaned points, and that still leaves, you can't hardly see it, but there's one point still here in the middle, so we still have a part at this point. If I go in here and I delete this one last point, okay, notice once I've deleted that, now it says no project loaded down here in the corner, and there's no axis indicator. There's no points, there's nothing involved there. So at that point I actually have gone ahead and deleted, and I do not have a part anymore. Alright, so we'll bring our box back up here, and so we talked about deleting polygons. Another neat little feature you can do is you can actually flip the polygons from whatever direction they're facing to the opposite direction. So again, starting with the polygon on this top down view, the one that's facing the back of this cube, if I go up to if I'm in polygon mode and I go to my polygon menu and I pull down, the first option there is flip, or the shortcut key is F. So we can go ahead and select that. And notice down here in the design window that the perpendicular vector here is now obviously showing that it's pointing in the opposite direction. So if I come around here and I swing this guy around and we find that polygon that we just flipped, we can see that it indeed doesn't look like it's there, but it is there. It's just that it's facing in the opposite direction, and because it's facing in the opposite direction, we can't see anything. So if I hit F again to unflip it, you see it comes back. So we can flip, unflip, flip, unflip. We could do that all day. The cool thing is we can flip one polygon at a time. So we can flip this one, and then let's say go to the front one and flip that one. Okay, now you can maybe able to see that as I kind of move it around there, but the two polygons on the front and the back of the cube are now facing each other. If I turn this one around, you'll see the opposite polygon. Okay, I can undo that, unflip that guy, go back here, unflip this guy, so it gives me my normal cube again. I can use my highlight key or my space bar or whatever to highlight more than one polygon. So if I go down here and select again the rearward facing polygon and press my space bar, move to the next polygon or scroll to the next polygon, notice it leaves that polygon in this yellow color, which is my selection color. Go ahead and use my space bar again to highlight the frontwards facing polygon. Now I can go up here to the polygon menu, come down to flip all or flip selected. So in this case I have two polygons selected, and if I click this, it's going to go ahead and flip both those that I've selected. And again, it does the same thing we just did, but it did it in one step instead of two. Okay, so we can undo that, and whoops, let's redo that. We don't want to do that. So we've got our regular cube again. And then the other thing you can do is you can go up here, if you just want to flip the whole thing inside out, you can just go to polygon and go flip all in this case. And it's probably hard to kind of see over here in the window, but we've essentially flipped this cube inside out. Okay, we can still see through it because we're looking through the back side of these polygons, which is not rendered, so it allows us to see the other faces, but we've indeed flipped this entire cube inside out. So there's a real practical exercise that I'll demonstrate here that shows you where this comes into play, and it has to do with copying and pasting parts. So let me delete this cube here. Let me go ahead and bring up a new cube, and I'm going to make just essentially like a hanger structure real quick to show you how you build the outside of a hanger and the inside of a hanger in just a couple clicks of your mouse. So we'll do a hanger here. We'll make it 100 feet wide, make it 30 feet tall, we'll make it 50 feet deep. I'll make its origin at the bottom so that it sits on the Z plane, or the ground level inside the game here. Turn my grid back on so that you can see when I zoom this guy out here that he is indeed sitting level on the ground here. So again, like we said, try to make sure when you design your scenery that you're always designing it on the ground level, which is a little bit different than when you design an airplane. You're actually going to sit it kind of back in the middle there. But for scenery, it always goes on the ground level. Now, one thing we can do here is we can go ahead and delete this downwards facing polygon that's going to be essentially adjacent to the ground, because again, this isn't going to be seen by anybody in game, and so there's no point to make your computer draw it, because at that point you're just going to be wasting resources. So let's go ahead and go to polygon mode, and let's use our arrow keys or your P key or your X key, whatever you want to do, and scroll around until we get to that downward facing polygon. And again, I'll turn the grid off so you can see it a little bit clearer here. So there we have our downward facing polygon. I'll go ahead and hit delete to delete that, and you can see up here in the design window that it is indeed gone. It's not been flipped, it's just gone. Alright, looks like the computer's going to freeze up. There it goes, it's frozen up, so just bear with me here a second. I'll reboot everything and I'll come back here in just a second. Hang on. Okay, we're back. That was actually a pretty good crash. It took a little while to clear that out of my system there, but I don't know why it does that sometimes. When you start doing some things over here in the preview pane that are kind of graphically kind of challenging, it throws a fit and will crash. So it is important, like we talked about it before in the other tutorials, to make sure your autosave feature is turned on. I think I have mine set to every 5 minutes just to make sure you don't lose too much work when that happens. So we'll go back to talking about how you make a hanger real quick, making the inside and the outside of the hanger by flipping polygons. So again, I'll make my hanger 100 feet wide, I'll make it 30 feet tall, and 50 feet deep. I'll have it origin at the bottom so it sits up on the ground plane. We'll center it up here. We'll go back into polygon mode. I will go and scroll to the bottom facing polygon. I will delete that. because we're not going to see that anyway. You can see over here it's gone. Alright, and then what I'm going to do is I want to delete the front door, essentially the front surface of this hanger. So I'll go ahead and delete that. So if you can bear with me over here, you can kind of see we have the makings of a hanger. We have the top, the two sides, and the back. Right, the easiest way to make the inside of this new hanger is to just simply go over here, and anytime you use copy and paste, you're actually copying and pasting the entire part. There's no way I know of to actually copy an individual polygon and, let's say, flip it. So instead of going around and copying each polygon and flipping them one at a time, whenever you use copy and paste, as far as I know, it's going to copy the entire part and then paste a new part. So we'll go ahead and go copy up here. Go ahead and go paste down here, and we can actually see that we have box.1 down here in our FSDS model name box. And just to prove that to you, I'll move it here real quick, just to show you that it is indeed, there are two separate pieces there. If I zoom that in, you can see there are two separate pieces there. So let me get him back in the center. And now we just want to make the inside portion of this hanger, and if you kind of followed along in the tutorial, you should be thinking to yourself, okay, well, I've just pasted it, why don't I just flip every single polygon associated with this new part? So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go into polygon mode and just come up here to polygon menu and come down here to flip all selected. And when I do that, you can see it makes the inside of, of our building structure, or hanger, if you will. Now obviously the polygons are right next to each other, so there's really no depth to this. So when you do this, you just have to make it look like, if you want to add some thickness to the walls, you can do that. You could maybe come in here to this part, and you could maybe scale it a little bit down so that there is some some thickness to it. But that's up to you if you want to do it that way. But again, this is a real quick way to make the inside and outside of a structure by simply just making the outside, deleting whatever polygons you don't need, copying that, pasting it, and then flipping all the polygons associated with that new piece. So we'll do another quick demonstration. We'll delete these two. This time we'll make like a aircraft shelter, like a hardened aircraft shelter that's open on both ends here. So I'll give a radius of about what the heck? Well, let's do 25, length of 50. That's fine. Points per section, and we just need 8 sections. We'll close all the front and the back and make it along the z-axis here and hit OK. Alright, so in this instance we have a full cylinder, and a rather segmented cylinder at that. So to make this into the start of an aircraft shelter, we essentially need just half of this, or a semicircle or a semi-cylinder. So first thing I'm going to do is go into polygon mode, and I'm going to delete the two end pieces on this so that we have an open-ended aircraft shelter. And notice it goes right to these these segmented polygons, or the pieces that make up the lengthwise segment. So if I go backwards, if I go forwards, it'll go around the whole thing. But if I go backwards, it usually go to the two end pieces first. So there's one. That's the frontwards facing end piece. So I'll go ahead and delete that, which is what we see on the screen there in the preview window. I'll switch this around, and notice again when I deleted it, it automatically sequenced to the very next polygon in the order there, which is the rearward facing polygon, which I'll go ahead and delete that. So I've opened the two ends up. Okay, I need to get rid of the bottom half of this cylinder. The easiest way to do that, and I could do it by deleting the polygons, but again, if I just deleted the polygons, that would leave the vertexes or the points still there. So to do everything in just one step, I'll go to point mode, select my selection tool. I'll go ahead and draw a selection box around all the bottom vertexes or points and hit delete. It'll ask me, do I want to delete points, because it'll remove structure information. Do I want to proceed? I'll hit yes. Okay, and now I've gone ahead and gotten essentially my semicircle, or my half shape here. I'll go ahead and go back to part mode. I'll scale this a little bit in the Y direction, just kind of flatten it out to make it look a little more realistic. Let's see, go up here to, I guess we're in meters right now, so that's fine. So just kind of flatten it out so it looks more like an aircraft shelter. And once I'm happy with that, okay, I will go into the F2, which is a part property. Since I'm in part mode, I'll just go ahead and click on polygon smoothing to smooth the whole thing out, and then we get a lot smoother looking surface. Now again, to make the inside of this real quick, all we need to do is go to go to copy, go to paste, and notice we have tube.1 here, tube.1, so that tells me I know I have a second tube in there. Right now they're both on top of each other, so we can't see them. But I can go into polygon mode, and again just go polygon and go flip all selected, and you can see it draws the inside of the tube. Okay, and you can join those together if you want. I would recommend not joining them together, leaving them as separate parts. That way you can texture them separately. But again, that's just a real quick example of where you can use the flip feature, flip polygon feature to draw stuff very quickly and very efficiently. Alright, so the last thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about adding polygons. So to do this, let me delete these guys and let me bring up just a flat polygon part, and I'll give it a bunch of sides here so that we can do this in a relatively quick fashion here. We'll make it 20 meters in radius, and the perpendicular axis will be y, so that it sits right on the ground. So here's our polygon, or octagon in this case. 8-sided structure, but it is still technically a polygon. And again, if we went over here to File, Project Statistics, FSDS would tell you, hey, it's just one polygon. If we go into the game and it gets rendered by your graphics engine, it's going to get probably rendered as at least, I don't know, probably 8 separate, triangles or 8 separate slices. But for the purpose of this, I want to go ahead and just delete the whole polygon, because we're going to go ahead and draw it back in here in a second. So to just delete the whole polygon, I'll go to polygon mode and I'll just hit delete, and notice it goes away. But again, we still have a part, because again we still have the part axis indicator, and if I go into point mode, we still have our 8 points here as well. Alright, so at any time you want to add a polygon back in, or you want to draw a new polygon, you have to select at least 3 points. Those 3 points should be in the same plane, in the same X, Y, or Z plane. If they're not, it may still add the polygon back in, but it's going to look kind of weird. The shading on that particular face or that facet is going to be really weird, and you're just not going to get a real clean look. So if you try to add a polygon using more than 3 points, let's say using 4 or 5 points, same thing may occur. You might get some kind of odd shading, or it may not even do it. So just to start out a basic exercise here, we just need to select 3 points, okay, and between those 3 points, we'll just we'll tell FSDS to draw us a new polygon, and as long as we've done everything correctly, it should do that. So to select these 3 points, I'm in scale mode right now for some reason. I'll just get out of scale mode, and because I'm not in move, rotate, or scale mode, I now have just a straight crosshairs as far as my pointer goes. So I know on the video it may look to you like just a mouse pointer, but again, inside of the FSDS window, it's just going to be a set of crosshairs. So I'll bring my crosshairs up here to my top point, which is already my current point. I'll just click on it just to make sure I'm in that design window. It gets the yellow box around it. I'll click on that point. It turns it white. Okay, I'll go ahead and press the space bar, which then turns it green, meaning I highlighted it. I'll go to one of the other points that it's around, and let's just do this point here. I'll highlight that, press the space bar on this point here. I'll highlight that and press the space bar. Now I have 3 points. They're all highlighted, and they're all in the same plane. I should be able to go up here to polygon mode, and notice it says make poly from selected points. I'll click on that, and notice we've got a polygon up here. Okay, it came up, it's in green, but notice down here, let me turn off the grid again. Notice down here that the perpendicular vector is pointing downwards, so that's why it's not showing up right now in the design window or the preview pane. It's because it's actually facing in the opposite direction. So what do? This is where that whole flip function comes into play. So I'll just hit F on my keyboard, and by doing that, I flipped it over to the correct side, and so I can see it now. Let me play with it there so you can see it show up. Okay, so whenever you add polygons, you have to take notice of which way it orients itself, and if it's facing in the opposite direction that you want it to, just use your F key to flip it around there. So I'll go back to point mode, which I can use F8 for a shortcut key for that, and I'm just going to keep this process, keep repeating this process until I fill this whole thing in. Okay, so I can just do this real quickly, and I'll just kind of fire through this here and do it as fast as I can so that we can get this done. Whoops. So select those 3 again, and keyboard shortcut is for adding a polygon is Control P. Okay, that polygon for whatever reason decided to orient itself the correct direction. Okay, so that's good. We don't have to flip that. Go back to point mode. Okay, select the different points that I want to add back in here. Control P, and again you can see that we're slowly building our structure back in. And this is the kind of a neat thing with FSDS, is if you can get the vertexes in there or the points in there where you need them, you can always build the polygons back in around them. So again, just picking any 3 polygons, doesn't really matter which ones. And Control P will add a polygon in. Again, this one oriented itself in the wrong direction, so we'll just flip that back over and you see it show up here. That just leaves us with one polygon left to fill in, so back to point mode. Highlight the one, and you kind of have to look at it to make sure you select the correct vertexes or the correct points to add your polygon back in. All right, got those three selected. We'll do the final one, and we've filled our whole octagon, if you will, back in at this point. Now notice, if we go up here to File and Project Stats, it's now going to tell you have 6 polygons. Okay, whereas before it would have told us it was just 1. So that's how you add polygons back in, and there are a lot of different uses for when you're going to add or redraw polygons back in, and that's just a very quick demonstration on how you do that. One last thing I want to show you here today is the fact that you can subdivide your polygons into multiple polygons or more polygons. So to do that, I'll start with basically just a basic triangle here, 3 sides, and for right now this is considered 1 polygon. And to do this, let me turn off the solid view so you can see how this works. Let's see, zoom in here. Okay, go back into polygon mode. You can see our one single polygon, it's pointing upwards in the correct direction, or it's facing upwards. Now, if I go up here to, if I'm in poly mode and I go up here to the polygon menu, I come down to, there's 3 choices here. Well, there's 4 actually. There's subdivide all / selected, smooth subdivide, or smooth subdivide all / selected. So since we just have 1 polygon right now, I can choose subdivide, and you'll see what happens is it actually divides the whole thing into 3 separate polygons. So whereas we had just 1 before, we've now got 3 individual polygons that I can scroll through and choose at our discretion. Okay, I can do this process where I can just choose 1 polygon. I can go back up to the polygon menu and hit subdivide, and that'll just subdivide that single polygon. Okay, so if I needed to add a little more shape to this area of the part, I could do that. I could go to that shape, in that section of the shape in that polygon, and I could subdivide it. And then when I do that, notice when I go to point mode here, let me expand this so you can see it a little bit better. Notice it's adding points or adding vertexes each time I do this. So if I want to come over here and do this polygon and subdivide it, okay, I can do that. Okay, and every time I do that, it adds more vertexes or more points, and therefore I can get a little bit more definition out of my part. All right, so in this case, I've got 3 polygons. I can choose to subdivide each one at a time, or I can go ahead and just go polygon, subdivide all, and it'll divide all 3 polygons. And now I divided each polygon, each of the 3 polygons, into 3 individual polygons. So now we're up to 9 polygons. If you just keep doing this, subdividing all, you eventually get this very complex structure with all kinds of different vertices and whatnot. So you can do that until you make yourself happy there. Now the difference between subdivide and smooth subdivide is something that I don't understand. You can do this, and you can try it on your own, and you can play with it a little bit, and you can just see what happens. I don't understand why, what the whole difference is, but I can tell you that obviously, as you can see here, we're getting, as we choose smooth subdivide the whole thing, we're getting a fairly complex shape going here. It's still a flat shape, but it's no longer our nice triangular shape. But again, each time we do this, we create new polygons, and you can see as I scroll through my different polygons here, we've created a whole monster here. And if we go over here and count these in the statistics, it's up to 189 polygons. So you just have to be careful when you subdivide something, because you're adding more vertices, you're adding more detail to it, and therefore you're adding more triangles that your graphics engine has to render. So as good scenery designers, as good aircraft designers, we try to get away with using as few triangles and as few polygons as we need to, so that your computer doesn't have to spend a lot of resources trying to draw that out. All right, so we've done a couple examples about quick hangars or aircraft shelters and using the flip feature. We've talked about copying, pasting. You cannot copy and paste individual polygons. It ends up copying and pasting the whole part. We talked about deleting individual polygons. We talked about the fact that you can only rotate, or you can try to rotate a polygon, but in effect rotates the entire part, so that really there is no feature or no function of the move or the rotate or the scale function. We talked about how you add polygons back in, so that's just something you guys can play with, and you can try that. And if you start working with a, for example, a cube, let me delete out of this real quick and just show you. If you go to a cube, let's do a symmetrical cube here, so 20, 20, 20. and you delete all the sides on your cube, and then you go to try to add these back in, that's an exercise you can try, and it kind of takes that whole, like we talked about, being able to wrap your mind around this whole idea of three-dimensional design, because remember, not all the points are going to be in the same plane, so you have to work at it. You have to scroll a little bit to make sure you get the same 3 points, or that in this case are on the same face, before you add a polygon back in. So that's a little bit more complicated. It takes a little bit more time, but it is something you can do and you can work on. So that's polygon mode, kind of in a nutshell, as we say over here in the States. And if you have any questions about it, just come see us in the forums. We're always happy to answer questions if you have a good question, and just play with that a little bit and see how that works with your design. Don't forget, as a good scenery designer, to delete those bottom facing polygons of all your structures, and that goes for inside polygons as well. If you make a hanger and it's got an inside to it but you can't see inside of it, go ahead and delete those. If you put 2 parts together, 2 cubes together, and you join them, make sure you delete those 2 polygons that face each other, that again you're not going to be able to see, because again you're going to do your users of your of your creations a big favor by helping their computer along and making sure it doesn't draw stuff that it doesn't need to be drawing. So that's it. Come see us in the forums. Thanks for watching this one. We'll try to get to the next tutorial here pretty quickly, and we'll see you guys over at the site. Thanks.